One of the things that every hip hop fan loves talking about are the biggest what ifs in the genre, and it's interesting when you look at the different countless possibilities that could have affected the culture if a certain event didn't happen or would have happened differently. So in today's episode, guys, we're going to be taking you through some of the biggest what ifs in rap history, such as what if Biggie and Tupac were still alive, what if Kanye West never existed, and much more. But let's get started with an interesting one, and that is, what if Pop Smoke, XXXTENTACION, and Juice WRLD were still with us?
Yeah, I think this one's interesting just because their impacts were undeniable, and people have seen the types of legacies that these artists left behind and what type of lanes they also carved out for the music industry. And when we initially put this tweet out on Twitter just to see what the community was feeling, this was a major talking point. I feel as if also for a lot of the younger generation of music listeners, these were the three most relatable artists. I mean, take it back to 2019 when Pop Smoke just started popping off with Welcome to the Party. Or let's say, it's the first time you're listening to Lucid Dreams. Or let's say it's the first time you go through 17. These were moments in history, and I think that you're seeing their influences now. I think that you're really starting to understand what they did. So, what do you think the possibilities would have been if you were to be able to see a beautiful, full-fledged career, even though they still had incredible careers?
Yeah, I mean, listen, hip-hop is like the number one genre in the United States right now, and I feel like they had the potential to make it the number one genre worldwide, and that just shows you how big these artists truly were, because even if you look at the fucking streaming numbers, bro, they are literally some of the most streamed artists of all time. And yes, you can make the argument of okay, once an artist passes away, that's when they have this tremendous blow up. They receive all this attention.
But they were popping off before that.
That's my point.
They were popping off before that.
They had platinum plaques.
Absolutely.
They were charting on Billboard way before that. And I feel like they all offered something so unique to the hip hop scene. I mean, you look at someone like XXXTentacion, for example, he would have been the most versatile artist, in my opinion, in the genre right now if he was still around.
Yeah, you're getting those studio albums and you're wondering how does this sound so good, but yet there's this sort of taint on it that feels rusty, that feels very to the heart, if that makes sense, with X's music. Example, Pop Smoke, he was getting the 50 Cent comparisons of being this mega hit banger that brings this energy and this mic presence that you won't find from any other rapper. Then you get Juice WRLD, who was absolutely dominating the melodic rap lane with this implement of emo rap, and regardless if you like their records or not, you cannot deny the success and the impact of them and what they've done for this generation.
But that's what I'm saying, bro, is that those, even someone that works for, I think, the urban section of Spotify, that came out in an interview, and he said how there would be way more of an uphill trend towards the popularity of the genre if they were still around, because if you look at 2018, 2019, the genre met its fucking plateau, bro, in the sense of this was the highest we had ever seen hip-hop becoming, and it just makes me wonder what would it be like now, bro? Also, we're now in a position where we don't even have leaders of this generation.
Hold on.
Bro, we don't.
Okay, listen, that's where I think that, I don't know, there's still certain people that are doing great things from that generation, like a Biggie.
I know.
You get it, but I get what you're saying, though, is that
they would have been the big three. The Drake, J. Cole, Kendrick,
yes.
That would have been Juice WRLD, XXXTentacion, and Pop Smoke. You listen to Pop Smoke, bro, he makes your ears perk up like a Busta Rhymes would have, or a DMX. Just the sound of his voice was so captivating, and he had the streets on lock, bro.
Yeah, that's everything. Everyone was bumping that, and I think that that's what they did so well, is that anyone and everyone was gonna be able to get into their music. They were taking it to a whole global standpoint. So I think it's interesting, guys. Let me know how you feel about this conversation and the topics. But bro, let's go on to the next one. What do we got?
Let's go on to the next one. What if Kanye West never existed? And this is a very interesting case, just because Kanye West forever has been one of the most impactful, if not the most impactful, hip-hop artists of all time, one of the most influential. And when I think of Kanye, one of the first aspects of his career that I look at is him being a mentor and a trainer. And when you're looking at the different Kanye West proteges, you have people in that conversation such as a Travis Scott, you have a Kid Cudi, you have a Chance the Rapper, you have a Big Sean, you have some of the biggest and best artists of our time that maybe wouldn't have had a career at all if they weren't either discovered by Kanye or mentored by Kanye.
This is an interesting conversation, I think, because if you look at it, look at the hip-hop culture and take away Kanye West's influence, especially after 2016 with the whole Yeezy run as well. Kanye's impact, I feel transcended way beyond music itself and started affecting pop culture and the way people were thinking about things. And if you look at what happened early on in his career, do you get the college dropout, bro? Do you get like that through the wire where now he's like, okay, things have happened to me, but I'm going to build a career off of this and look what's going to happen. Like, that's what I find so interesting is that it took that one event at the beginning of his career to be able to kind of just add this, you know, fuel to the fire. And even watching the Genius documentary on Netflix, he explains how important that was to his career and what type of material was inspired by that.
Absolutely.
So it's incredible.
That's the thing is like, let me ask you this. If you take out records from the whole stratoscope of everything, let's say you take out a college dropout, or you take out an 808s and Heartbreak, or you take out a Graduation, that would be us removing electronic arena rap. That would be us taking away Chipmunk Soul. That would be us, you know, never having the auto-tune influence that Kanye brought onto hip-hop with the help of T-Pain to make artists kind of push themselves to make this vulnerable, more melodic rap music.
You know what I think was so cool about Kanye, too, and the way that he did those things is that I agree. I don't think those sounds would have been as accessible, but I think they still would have been there.
I don't know if they would have been there. Without 808s and Heartbreak, do you have an Uzi? Do you have a Travis Scott?
No, obviously not. I think that what Kanye did with his productions definitely moved the future generation of artists to move forward. What I'm saying, though, is that like there was people doing like a sort of Chipmunk Soul before Kanye West was. Like an example, like a Pete Rock used to have that in his like, let's say, in his production catalog. So what I'm saying, even let's say the auto-tune, if it wasn't going to be Kanye to use it, someone else would have. But what he did with it, I think, is what means the most. So example,
but it took a Kanye West to use that auto-tune to bring it to the masses and for it to have the impact that it had. And
he used it the best. Like he used it the best.
Kanye West is a needle mover. He's the kind of guy that can take the genre and alter its direction. That's when you know you're fucking irreplaceable as an artist.
Not only that, but I also think that the live moments that he created, especially with his rollouts, I mean, changed the way that people look at live experiences and the way that they interact with the music now. Looking at what Kanye did with the Donda rollouts, it was genius because you felt like you were a part of the curation process. And look what all these companies are trying to do now. They're trying to let their people in and understand and have more of that community feel because Kanye's had this unlocked for such a long time. So I think if things would have gone differently, even if Kanye West was never born, you know, forget the car crash at the beginning, like what would music be without him, which is fucking incredible to think about.
Especially in this generation, because when you look at like the most influential people of this generation, you have names, you know, circling around like a Chief Keef or like a Kanye West. Like a Lil Wayne. And without Kanye's influence, I feel like this entire landscape of modern hip-hop would be completely different.
Absolutely.
I think maybe hip-hop would still be striving, but not the same way that it would have without Kanye West's touch. But let's go on to the next what if. And this is probably the most spoken about what if in hip-hop history. And it is what if Biggie and Tupac were still alive. And I think the most spoken about events in hip-hop history are the unfortunate murders of Tupac and Biggie, who passed away in 96 and 97 respectively. And now that it's 25 years after their passing, I feel like most hip-hop fans are still wondering, you know, what if the East Coast and the West Coast were never at odds, you know? What if Tupac and Biggie were able to realize their full careers? What would music be like? What kind of music would they be making?
And you know what's interesting is that like everyone has documented this event. Every big publication, almost every artist has been asked about this one event. And it's crazy because everyone has different answers. Like people don't know what to make out of the situation. Like there are certain people that think that those tragic passings, you know, gave an extra fuel to the genre to do better and to be able to create more quality music. Then there's, you know, the other side of the coin where people are like, well, they would have had some of the greatest catalogs if they were developed properly because they were taken from us at such a young age. And then, you know, you also get the value of those projects like A Ready to Die or A Life After Death or An All Eyes on Me or, you know, anything, you know, take anything that those two gentlemen created and you're like, this is some of the best of the genre. So imagine being like, imagine seeing the development of that. Even at that, you would have gotten a Jay-Z and Biggie collaboration album. That would have been absolutely incredible.
Yes, we would have gotten The Commission, you know, which, you know, Biggie kind of teased on What's Beef. And even last year, I don't know if you remember, but Jay-Z on Neck and Wrist was rapping about how, like, The Commission would have happened. And that would have been, I believe, Biggie, Jay-Z, Diddy, Lil C's, Charlie Baltimore, and Lance Rivera. So it would have been like a 6-man super group in hip-hop.
But like imagine it would have been like sort of like a Wu-Tang feeling, but with luxury rap. And just being like that sort of thing.
And that's what's interesting too, is that I feel like Biggie and Tupac did not even reach their musical prime, bro. Because you had Biggie who had dropped 2 back-to-back masterpieces and still felt like he had more to say and he had more to prove.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you look at Tupac and his last 2 albums alive were All Eyes on Me and The 7 Day Theory, which
incredible.
Besides Me Against the World, those are his best albums.
Absolutely.
So they were both on pace to reach heights that we've never seen before. I also feel like Biggie would have gone down undisputed as the greatest rapper of all time if he was still alive today, because he would have had the album volume to back it up. And I also believe that he would have steered away from like the mafioso gangster rap roots.
He was so versatile.
Because, bro, he was rapping over West Coast, G-funk beats. He was working with people like Bone Thugs and Harmony. And he always said that he was not afraid to experiment regionally and try out different sounds.
Yeah,
and I feel
absolutely.
like he would have been an all-around player. And even subject matter-wise, Biggie always rapped about his life. But his life was going to start to be more of that mogul businessman vibe as a Jay-Z.
Exactly.
Like, he had plans to start up his own clothing brand, open up restaurants. Like, that's the other big question. Do you think Jay-Z has the impact that he has now if Biggie was still around?
Yeah, absolutely. I think so. Just because of like what he did in his career. Like, yes, obviously, like Jay-Z was heavily influenced by Biggie, but I mean, like, they were kind of like more of like a duo ship rather than like, who does more. Like, I feel like it's kind of like a Kanye West and Jay-Z situation.
I'll say this, though. I don't think Hov would have been crowned king of New York in like 97, 98 if Biggie was still here.
Oh, that's
I
an
don't think
interesting
he would have
fact.
been.
That's interesting. But I want to talk about Tupac as well, just because,
sure.
like, even looking at the state of Interscope Records at that time and what was going on with Jimmy Iovine and Trent Reznor and like Nine Inch Nails and even Marilyn Manson, Eminem at that time, imagine seeing a prime Tupac, let's say, in the midst of like that Interscope and Aftermath takeover. Let's say if those things didn't escalate there. Let's say, and imagine this, because the thing too is that Jimmy Iovine was talking about this in the Defiant Ones, and he was saying that like he wanted to see a full-fledged studio album of just Dr. Dre beats and Tupac. Imagine having Tupac Shakur on a full studio album produced by Dr. Dre. Imagine him in 2001, how stupid that would have been. It would have been disgusting. If guys like Hitman and also Exhibit and even Snoop Dogg's were striving underneath that sound, give that to Tupac and he is absolutely murdering it. And what's crazy is that you could argue he was at his peak form. Like, Me Against the World is my favorite Tupac album. I'll tell you right now. But seeing the type of legacy that he left behind, that craftsmanship, he was one of the best thinkers ever in the genre.
And I think he would have continued to spread that social consciousness and kind of maybe, if he had more albums, inspired more artists to be these hip-hop activists in the form of a Kendrick Lamar. Would have seen more Capital Steez type artists as well. But last thing before we move on from this topic, I want to talk about is sort of like the dream collaboration. So for Biggie and Tupac, bringing in today's artists, for example, like imagine hearing Biggie over some Timbaland kicks or some like Boy Won the Bounce, bro. Boy Won the Drums with Biggie spitting over that.
Imagine The Alchemist and like Tupac working together on that sort of thing where you're getting these abstract, dark, eerie sample flips behind it. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's so many possibilities.
That would be nuts. Biggie going bar for bar with like a 50 Cent or a Benny the Butcher.
That would be crazy.
Tupac and Kendrick, of course, is the ultimate link up.
Yeah, or like let's say a Tupac and an Anderson .Paak.
Yeah,
that would be crazy.
Guys,
like stylistic.
We're just robbed of so much, and what's crazy is that it's like we never even got to see them in our lifetime. Around at shows making music, but. Imagine for the actual fans that got to see their rise, like how heartbreaking it must have been during that time. So that'll forever, I think, remain the biggest what if in the genre. But let's go on to another one now. And this is a conversation that we have often, but not in this context. So what if 99% of rappers had ghostwriters? And since the beginning of rap, I feel like ghostwriting has been frowned upon, but at the same time, it's always been utilized. You look at the first hip-hop song ever, Rapper's Delight, by the Sugar Hill Gang. That was a ghostwritten song.
There was a lot of different projects that were ghostwritten. I mean, even let's say Kanye West, for example, like Consequence helped Low-key form his entire catalog. And on certain levels with the writing and the simplicity and the accessibility of things, like with Kanye West have the projects he does without a consequence. You're not sure at that point, especially what ended up happening in 2015 with the whole Drake thing. Like, there was this sort of explosion, but in my head, I'm like, Jay-Z's ghostwriting for people. Like, there's so many, like, it's just a way of doing things. And I feel like if it would be accepted across the board, maybe you would get better music, because music is also a collaboration process at the end of the day.
It's very collaborative.
Absolutely. And the thing is that, let's say, an artist like a Kanye or a Drake or anyone else that does it, for their context and their style of music, it makes sense because you're trying to get to the best product you possibly can. And if you feel like, let's say, a certain writer could come and help and enhance this thing, then fine. But let's say for a Kendrick Lamar and a J. Cole, those are two completely different situations. I feel like it would maybe put a taint on something just because of how personal the music feels, and like they're claiming to be the top penmen.
But putting it in the scenario where 99% of rappers come out and say, yes, I've had this verse written for me, I've had this song written for me, this entire album that I delivered was actually written by Michael Jenkins or whoever the fuck. How would you feel as a fan knowing that some of your favorite artists, some of the most lyrically gifted artists in the genre, had help writing their verses? Not a hook, not a simple line.
Okay, I'll give you the scenario.
Verses.
Okay, like let's say,
because this is how I feel. Okay, when it comes to personal songs like "Stand" from Eminem or "A Sing About Me I'm Dying of Thirst" from Kendrick, if I had found out that those songs and those verses were not penned by those artists, I would personally feel hurt because those tracks are so personal.
Yeah, and
so
you feel cheated.
It loses
absolutely
the authenticity value of that track. And I feel like, again, if you're holding yourself to be a purist in the hip hop industry, you have to hold yourself to a certain standard. And to me, again, having a hook written for you is one thing, but having an entire track is a totally different story.
I agree with you. And I think that, like I said, for a J. Cole, like if I found out someone else penned together For Your Eyes Only, it's because I'm so captivated by the writing. But example, someone like a Drake, like if I found out, let's say, that someone wrote one of his biggest hits, I'd be like, oh, that makes sense. You know, it's a fucking diamond song. Like you low-key have to expect it in certain instances.
The more popular and mainstream a song is, the more you can think, okay,
but
maybe there was some help there.
But that doesn't necessarily mean dip in quality though. So example, like let's say with the Drake and Kanye situation, right? Like those two are probably the biggest and most influential artists of our generation, right? So do you look at them and be like, oh, I have to discredit your entire impact because someone helped you in that process? No, of course not.
No,
like,
but in an all-time rapper list, though, I will put someone like a Drake lower just because some of his best songs, in my opinion, a lot of the stuff off of If You're Reading This Is Too Late, was penned by QM and some other people.
Yeah, but like you're like let's say someone like a Drake, like I don't necessarily put him in like a Black Thought sort of situation. Whereas if with Black Thought, I don't put him in the Drake one.
But Drake has those lyrically menacing tracks.
Absolutely.
So you kind of you could put him in those types of conversations.
But that's the thing about Drake is that it's so polarizing because you could go with each and every single one. So I think, listen, if I had to get down to a final verdict, I think that it would just be accepted. It would probably be the norm and people would go along with it. And like, I feel like now it's kind of like that novelty factor. You know, it's like an addition if you have it.
Absolutely.
So,
but guys, let us know, what do you think is the biggest what if in hip hop history? Let us know if we do a part 2. Which ones should we include? Maybe if the DOC never got into that accident. Maybe if Capital Steez was still around. If Lauryn Hill had released music. There's so many other ones to get through. So if you guys enjoyed this video, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Thank you guys so much for all the support on the videos. And also, if you guys are interested in hearing some of our music recommendations, there are links to Spotify and Apple for our podcast that's being released every week. Make sure to check those out. Thank you guys, and we'll catch you in the next one.